kat pintu, lepas tu silakan dia penuhkan tempat kosong. Why not kita penuhkan tempat kosong ni? Memang ke depan. Tak cantik. Faham, duduk depan. Tak Instagramable.
Zubir seorang-seorang.
Ni, 2 orang duduk depan. Meh duduk depan. Ni. Jemput. Come. 2 orang. Seorang lagi. Okey, kita boleh mulain. Assalamualaikum, Prof. Jemput. Kita nak about to start. Ya. Boleh. Duduk sini. Sedap sikit. Boleh pusing-pusing. Dia Iraqis. Boleh. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And very good afternoon. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina mursalin. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi syrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. First of all, I would like to thank God for this opportunity for us to be here today. This is our third session to discuss about Islam and secularism. This is an old book, but for many, including myself, whenever we read this book, we find it always new in understanding, because we are growing in terms of understanding, growing in terms of what we have in mind. Some of the concepts, despite it was written many years ago, but it's still fresh. I think this is an indication of classical books, classical texts. When you read and you reread again, you find it still new things that you find based on your present understanding, on absorbing new ideas that been discussed in the past. So as usual with us today is Professor Muhammad Zaini Uthman. He will take us to further discuss this book, and I'm very grateful despite we have 3-month breaks due to my, I'm so sorry, due to my 100 days World Lecture Tour that ended July 26. We still have this interest. I keep on asking my colleagues to join us online, so they are very interested to do that. That's very interesting also to note that we are not only here discussing about this book and reading this book. When I was in Turkey recently, so I found that people in Turkey also reading materials from this part of the world. So I'm very grateful for that. So with that, Professor Zaini, why don't you take us through?
Thank you, Dato Seri, again for the many occasions that we have the opportunity to be in this beautiful surrounding to discuss about great ideas, especially by a great living. From the Muslim point of view, Professor al-Attas would regard himself as a metaphysician because this book, we shall look at it in a bit. He talks about, he mentioned 2 particular terms. He mentioned about kalam and he mentioned about tasawwuf. And kalam from the English translation is theology, and tasawwuf he used the term metaphysics. And I will discuss about these things. It is important for us to revisit this book. I remember when we first started the series, when we revisit this book, Dato Seri was talking about how he first encountered the book. The same with myself. I first encountered the book when I was about, I think, 18 years old. And at that time, Professor al-Attas, 1981 to 1982, he was the Razak Chair at Ohio University in Athens, and he was visiting his daughter at the university that I was studying at that time, University of Wisconsin Madison. So I found the short, brief period, being listening to him, and the occasion that I have listening to him, after being nicely forewarned by Dato Haji Hassan Ali and also Professor Wan, that this is a great professor that you should pay attention to and you should listen to. So I just took the opportunity to go to the Memorial Library of University of Wisconsin, perchance that I might find any book. I mean, because I'm a bookish person. I like to find books. So lo and behold, I found Islam and Secularism in the library, and this is the edition that I found. It's the original edition published by Abim, 1978, and it was then addressed. The address of Abim is Jalan Pantai Baru. I think that's where near UM, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fascinating. Now I think it's maybe there's a highway over there.
No, still, but not the building.
Okay.
Other buildings.
So 1978, and this book was the basis that I have to work on when Professor al-Attas asked me to prepare the index for the book in 1992, I think, or 93, when I was working. So there are scribbles and scratches and notes and things like that. But what I want to impress upon our discussion today, by way of, in a way, like conclusion also of the book, is to see the timeline that goes into the thought process and the development of ideas of a scholar, a thinker, metaphysician like Professor al-Attas, in order to give some hope to us, because I think we might be a little bit bewildered to see, these are great ideas, I cannot understand anything. That was my impression also when I first read the book. 18 years old, coming from a completely Malay medium instruction of Sekolah Menengah. So the names, like, the big names in the contemporary Western background was quite a shock to me. But I think what happened, because of meeting him, somehow in the back of the mind, there is this yearning to understand what he mentioned. And because I was reading the book and I don't understand, one of the things that sparked me to read more is, he quoted Syed Hussein Nasr's Man and Nature in here. So I found Syed Hussein Nasr's Man and Nature, and from Syed Hussein Nasr, I found other references to René Guénon and many others. So then suddenly I think it opened up my mind that Islam is not a simple thing, because the first title is Islam and Secularism. I don't care so much about secularism because that is something like quantum mechanics. I don't understand. But Islam, so then, coming from a non-traditional Islamic madrasah, pondok, pesantren, it's quite a shock because, I won the Scientist Muda Award in 79 or 80. So I think I know something about science, But when Professor al-Attas mentioned Islam and reading his book, it's a completely open up my mind. It's a challenge, for any reader. Dato Sri would know. Any reader, they cannot stand their mind to be challenged. They will go and find the book, isn't it? So that's the kind of drive that we have. So that's the kind of thing that sparked my interest into, somehow I was turned into liking the field, because I was studying physics and astronomy, and somehow I got myself into reading other works to prepare myself to understand this. So I took classes on Greek literature and translation. I took classes on history of science, where I read the works of Aristotle, I read Newton, I read Galileo, I read Darwin, I read many things. And I remember in the last year of my undergraduate studies, for the summer class, I took a class on political philosophy, where I read most of these, other works of the great thinkers in the West. So it somehow gives a better, dimension. But what struck me was, 1978, he was born in 1931. So that would make him how old?
Yeah, 78, 31, 47.
47.
Yeah.
But you see, 47, he came up with a book later on. Well, Hamza Yusuf regard this as a great Muslim classics. I remember I mentioned to Professor Wan when we were working on this edition. I said, Prof Wan, because Prof Wan and myself, we were in the University of Chicago. University of Chicago is proud of its great books tradition. So I said, Prof Wan, Prof Wan, this is great Muslim classics. It's in the tradition of the great books of the Western world. This is one of it. Because Professor al-Attas mentioned in here, and again, it escaped me because I don't understand the gamut of the implication of the words being mentioned here. Partly because I was only 18 and he wrote it when he was 48, yeah, and his understanding was quite mature, and we look at it in a little bit. The immensity of the idea did not sink until later on. Like I think that's what Dr. Zaini was saying. We keep on reading it and suddenly opens up new doors of understanding, because our understanding of suddenly the meanings open up. The more mature you are in your reading, the greater the ideas become, and this is why the West has this, or at least the great books of the Western world. That's what they did, because these are considered by them books that shook and later on laid the foundation of what is called Western civilization. And we'll mention a little bit in a bit. He was born in 1931, Professor al-Attas. But when he was, I think, it mentioned here, in 1950, how old is he?
29, 29.
29 years old. Are you sure? 19, yeah.
19.
31 and 50. He was 19.
19. Okay.
19 years old, he was sent by Gerald Templer to Eton and then to the Royal Military. So he graduated from the Sandhurst in 1956. I remember he mentioned to us that there at Sandhurst, he read the works of the great Muslim metaphysicians, Jawi and others. You see? So this is why we must not, the idea of Dato Sri, steam and stamp.
Yeah.
This is why we must open the stream of the arts, reading humanities, because it opens up possibilities of the young minds to be molded, Dato Sri.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened to me too. Not to say that I become great or whatever, but the point is to balance, yeah, to give the mind the ability to maneuver between technical, scientific disciplines and also the humanities. In 1960, he graduated with an MA from Montreal with a book, Raniri and the Wujudia. And that was 1960. But when we look at his tradition of writing, that was his productivity, I found that quite fascinating. 1959, he translated Rubaiyat, Umar Khayyam. And he translated it as Rubaiyat, Rangkaian Rubaiyat. And I think Zaba mentioned something about it. So Zaba talked highly about the translation. And in fact, the translation is quite unique because Professor al-Attas was able to capture not only the rhythm of the poetry, of the Rubai, but also the meaning of it. Rubai, in this case, there are certain meters, Arabic meters. He was able to maintain the meter and then to use Malay words to carry the meaning that was there intended by Umar Khayyam.
Yeah.
That is not easy. Normally, when people translate from different language to another, from poetry, what is translated is not poetical. And it is what is translated also does not entirely reflect the meaning and the content of what was intended by original writer. So this gave me another understanding of the aspect, the personality of Professor al-Attas, and that is, as I've been saying many times, he is a man gifted with a certain knowledge, because it is not easy to see things at that level, which is metaphysics.
Yeah.
Like, for example, to compare him in terms of the quality of the work, when you read the Metaphysics of Islam, Prolegomena, an introduction to the Metaphysics of Islam, when you read that in English, you don't find anything comparable to that first in Arabic, meaning conceptualizing what is called in Arabic ru'yatul Islam lil wujud. What happens in the discussion in Arabic among Arabic writers are basically the khilaf, you know, the differences of opinion between, okay, what this man says, what this man says, what, you know, maybe Greek says, and this, but it's in Arabic. But for the formulation, it's not easy. I found that fascinating, because I remember when the book was actually being written, Professor al-Attas would give chapters and chapters to Professor Wan, myself, and we used to read and discuss with him. My response was, because I was trained in physics, I was saying, I remember I said to him, Professor al-Attas, I only wish that, you know, people who are trained in physics, in sciences, understand the metaphysics that goes behind it. Because apparently people don't think that philosophy is important in science. Just like, for example, Dato, people don't think philosophy, metaphysics, or worldview is important in economics, or even in finance, even in management. In management, it's completely lost, because they think management is about human behavior. Yeah, human behavior, but from where do you draw the nature of human being? And this is what Professor al-Attas, in his book, he talks why this is a great book, Dato Sri. He talks about ontology, he talks about psychology, and he talks about epistemology. This is why this book is an important work. And this is what happens to great thinkers of the past. When you write about these things, look, Aristotle, he wrote about metaphysics, which is ontology. He wrote about politics, you know. He wrote about psychology. Socrates, the same thing, which is captured in the works of Plato. And this is very fundamental. What is fascinating is that he is writing squarely drawn from the interpretation of the Quran. Unlike what has happened by Muslim scholars who were treating these subjects, like Ibn Sina. When he treated psychology, he was very much heavily influenced by the Greek philosophers. He tried to do a little bit of, because he's a Muslim, you know, he cannot, but he has to make in such a way that it fits. But he wasn't successful. And this is why Fazlur Rahman, a colleague of Professor al-Attas, whom Professor al-Attas met when he was a student at Montreal, McGill. Professor Fazlur Rahman wrote, you know, there is a need for an Islamic metaphysics in the book called Islam and Modernity. Because that book, in order for Muslims to confront modernity, Rahman saw we need metaphysics. That was the missing part. It's not just philosophy. Everybody was studying philosophy. But a summation, that to see, of making it up into a metaphysics. Now, this book, Islam and Secularism, the problem with us, Dato Sri, is that we look at Islam as a religion. And this has always been our problem. We have limited Islam to an understanding of it being a religion. Whereas Islam is not a religion per se, although that's what in fact, what is called, Islam is not a religion, it is a deen. And this is what Professor al-Attas has squarely positioned, one of the chapters, Islam, the concept of religion and the foundation of ethics and morality. So the concept of religion in Islam is entirely different from what is understood as religion in the West. Because the word dana in Arabic, meaning to bring consciousness closer to you. The experience of the West is to bring the consciousness close to the world. That's why the word dunya, in fact, dana, the word dunya is also closely related to the word dana. But from our point of view, deen is not so much about you being closely, in terms of your consciousness, closer to the world, but it is supposed to bring your consciousness closer to God. By virtue of the fact that the word deen is derived from the word dana, which is a debt. And this is the chapter 3 that the last time we did not discuss about. And this is what Prof. al-Attas is trying to emphasize. So this religion here, he says, is something entirely new. It's supposed to bring about a consciousness of man that he is now an entirely different creation. That's why he mentioned in the first chapter, the contemporary Western background, the problem of secularizing Christianity. Because what happened with Christianity was that experience, religiosity, the way of life of religion, as experienced by the Christian, has become to a point that it has been brought to the level of being connected to the world. By virtue of, I don't know whether it is an accident of history or because for some reason the church decided to adopt Aristotelian cosmology. Islam gives a different cosmology. That is why I have to say why this work becomes important, because it has to do with ontology, and ontology are things at the lower unseen level, okay, metaphysical level. And by implication, you know what happens at the cosmological level, at the big level. But in order to understand that, then you must know what is the nature of knowledge, which is epistemology. But how does knowledge arrive in man? Psychology.
Yeah.
So this is why this book is very important. And the word dana in Islam comprise all those three aspects. You have yourself, deen, you are now surrendering yourself, which is not in the earlier understanding of religion, because we think that religion is just a matter of performing obligations. You must do this, you must do that. But the purpose of that doing things, why is the purpose of ibadat? It's not clear. And this is why Professor al-Attas was saying, the word religion in Latin means to bind. Normally to bind it in like a contract with the gods. But what? There is no idea of indebtedness. But in Islam, that's what it is. Now, and the indebtedness is the debt of existence. That is ontology. So now you have something which is highly philosophical become entirely part and parcel, in fact, at the very core of religion itself. No one, well, previously, people don't think that religion has to do with ontology. But that's what Prof. al-Attas is trying to tell us. The problem with Christian background was that the secularization of the world begins with, number one, language, isn't it? It has to do with the changing of the language. And Prof. al-Attas has proof for this. In order to attack or to keep secularism at bay, we must use, or we must keep true to the language that is Islam. And the proof, Professor al-Attas, is this. Look at what happened to the Prophet himself. The very first event of the revelation is through language. The Quran was brought in a language that is entirely new. And that's why it is very important. Now, the nature of how this works. The problem with some people, now they think that because, well, no, language is just language. I remember one Muslim, young Muslim, came to see me. Yeah, but even the Quran is the language the Prophet gave meaning to it. It's entirely the reverse of what the Quran says. The Quran says, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. But now you have young Muslims saying, no, it's the meaning of the Prophet. Ya salam. See, these are Muslims talking. That means the worldview is not clear. The meaning of revelation is not understood because they don't know how it works. Because they have been influenced by maybe the philosophers of language of the Westerners, you see, philosophers of language, and you have lots of them. You know? For example, the positivists, they talk about A.J. Ayer, who talks about language, truth and reality or something. Yeah, anybody remembers that? That's the positivist, because if the language does not reflect reality, and that language is basically man giving meaning to it, but how does the language of the revelation come into being? Well, that is because they don't understand the nature of the human psychology. They understood human psychology from the point of view of the Western notion of psychology. This is what Prof. al-Attas talks about in the book on Prolegomena to the Metaphysics of Islam. One chapter is intuition of existence. What is that nature of intuition? Because that's what Prof. al-Attas was saying. This chapter don't speak to the public because it's very difficult for them to understand. But for those of you maybe who've been following these talks for a long time, maybe it's about time to sort of give a little bit what it is, you know. Intuition is an English word. It's somehow we have an understanding of it. Like Prof. al-Attas was saying, well, for some scientists, they think it is something that just, you know, a light bulb moment in their mind after they've been brooding over a problem. They have thinking about it for some time, and suddenly it all makes sense, and boop, you know. And also like Archimedes when he jumped to the bathtub and, oh, eureka, you know. That is one level. That is what is called intuition of scientific knowledge. And that we do not deny that. But when we say intuition of existence, there are two kinds. And this, Al-Ghazali spoke about it, Dato, in his book, Mishkatul Anwar. And I found that fascinating, because I'm translating the part of intuition of existence into Malay. And I found in the Arabic sources of Ghazali, he talks about this. Because our scholars, our ulama, when they speak about existence, they're not thinking about existence the way Greek philosophers thought about it. And this is why Islam is not a matter of religion at the level that is completely human and, how do you say, at this level of it. It has something to do with deep consciousness. Sorry to use that term for the lack of a, I do not want to, you know, use heavy term. Because we often think that when it comes to metaphysics, when it comes to ideas about tasawwuf, we tend to think that this is so deep. No, Prof. al-Attas was saying, not really, because at a certain level we do experience it. Like an experience of some depth of how the soul is completely, how do you say? The soul is, they use the term, simple term, absorbed in what it is doing. When you're reading, sometimes you forgot where your toe is. You just don't feel it, right? Yeah. So that, he says, is when the soul is completely connected with the meaning. So that, you know, some activity that you do become, what they say, subconscious. See? And there are also another level is, for example, what is called dreams. And that's why there's a whole science of interpretation of dreams. It's something to be looked into. But for the behavioral and the cognitive scientists of present day philosophy of minds, dreams is a big problem for them. But we do have some kind of like the story of dreams in the story of Nabi Yusuf in the Quran. So dreams are veritable, you know, veritable information that later on can give you an indication of something to happen and something that you might want to, you know, configure your life according to it. So this is what happens in the Muslim tradition of knowledge. This is what Prof. al-Attas is trying to say. The book Islam and Secularism, we must understand the whole gamut of what is at play. And this is what I found now, like Dato Sri also. I found it quite fascinating. I often go back to this book now. As I said, I know for sure it's a great book, and long after Prof. al-Attas has passed away, this book will be read, you know, because, like what he said in the introduction, Dato, this book was originally dedicated to the emergent Muslim. This was 1978. How many emergent Muslim has gone? Right? And this book, this is the second impression. The first one doesn't have this.
Yeah.
The reason why, this was printed in 1993. In 1995, the Prolegomena to the Metaphysics of Islam was published. So while writing this, the introduction, the second preface, and he was writing this at the new building, the old building of his staff. That was when Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim, 1987, appointed him as the university professor at IIU, and he developed his staff. And the building at, what was that? Jalan Damansara. It's Jalan Damansara, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. The first building, Jalan Damansara. So he was writing this there. So and Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim, when he appointed Professor al-Attas, he was saying, Professor al-Attas, it was the time for you, this is the time for you to realize what you said in your professorial address, Islam dan Sejarah Kebudayaan Melayu, that Kuala Lumpur should be the center of learning. And it is now, see. It's fascinating. And I keep on saying, sometimes, you know, we may not be in the building, because knowledge and learning is about ideas, not about buildings, you know. And I quoted the famous Jahili poetry, you know, Tilka atharuna tadullu alayna fandur ba'dana ilal athar. Those are our effects, you know, that points to us. So you can see, those of you from WISE who have seen the new building, yeah, you see how marvelous it is, right? The library, the fine carvings, the situation of things, you know, where things are put. I remember going through that with Professor al-Attas. There are many times I would go with him to buy stuff, you know, to select things to be in the library, and many other things. So he was writing this for that purpose. And this is what we are going through now. So I don't know how many cohorts of WISE have been there, how many. Since 1991, I don't know how many students have graduated from ISTAC. I lost count. I was one of them too, you know. Yeah. And for them to be intelligently prepared when their time comes. When your time comes, not him. He has done his part. The last talk, he said to Dr. Hilmi, this is it, isn't it? The last talk about Islam, covenant profile. So when your time comes, you have to be prepared. You know, we are already pensioners, to see. Prof. Azai. No, but we are pushing you guys. You know, we're pushing you guys because this is the life of the mind, and as I said, the soul has it doesn't have any age to it. To weather the discernment with pestilential winds of secularization, with courage to create necessary changes in the realm of our thinking that is still floundering in the sea of bewilderment and self-doubt. And this is what happened. Why do we have self-doubt? Why are we bewildered? Because generally we don't have certainty, right? Where does certainty lies? Certainty lies in the qalb. And that has to do with meanings. If you do not have the right meanings, you cannot have certainty. And this is why Professor al-Attas defines knowledge as the arrival of meaning in the soul, and the arrival of the soul at meaning. The question is, do you have the right meaning? And this is the key here. And this is why he begins the discussion of this to mention the beginning of the problems, because he saw it. You see, this is 1978, Dato Sri. Yeah. Professor Azra'i, you know, when you were in the UK with Dato Sri.
I was not.
You were
78.
I know, but you were in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
78 and the 80s, you are in the same era.
Yeah.
You can feel there is a move for this Islamic movement, right? Prof. al-Attas, although this book, the first one was printed by Islamic movement, the whole idea for him was, yes, we need the youth, but we need intelligent youth, equipped with knowledge. See? Because if you don't have the proper knowledge to weather the Western program of secularization, it will be very difficult for you to go ahead, to speed along. And this is why we still have this self-doubt and bewilderment. So 1979, the Iranian Revolution. I remember when we were at ISTAT, Dato, 1990s, when things are okay, there were many visitors coming from Iran. They would come and see Prof. al-Attas. They want to listen to him on the idea of education, because they say we need to rebuild our society. And Prof. al-Attas keep on saying, go to the tradition of the great Muslim thinkers of the past. And the great Muslim thinkers of the past, if you look from our Sunni traditions, basically coming from the land of Persia. Ibn Sina, Al-Ghazali, Jami, For some people, they might want to say, oh, these are all Iranians, No, they're not, because this is before the schism developed. Great ideas have no madhab. Just like great ideas doesn't come from male or female. See? And this is why Prof. al-Attas, in his book about the prolegomena metaphysics of Islam, he mentioned those who espouse a certain higher ideals about what is called the level of metaphysics that he was espousing. So, and he mentioned here, as a contemporary Western background, among the people that misled them, not with the intention of misleading them, but because they have their own philosophical program. Remember, the West by the 17th century has discarded religion because of the age of reason, enlightenment. You mentioned Voltaire. 17th century, you have Descartes, you have Isaac Newton. New discoveries are made. Yeah. It's also the age of Raniri, but that's a different matter altogether. It's the age of the philosophers, Christians themselves, the theologians, the poets, the novelists, the writers, the artists represent Western culture and civilization. Now, let us consider ourselves, who represents the civilization of Islam today? We have a problem. Do we have a playwright, somebody who writes scripts and things like that? No. Because they say some of the best movie coming from Iran. But then we have a problem with Iran.
Yeah.
We think they're Shia. The best poets presently that represent Muslim world. No. We're lost. I remember when I was a student at University of Chicago, my Arabic professor would go to Iraq for a yearly mahrajan of poetry, Arabic poetry. Now, with the destruction of Iraq, Palestine, Syria, there's no more mahrajan of poetry. There's no festival of poets. Arabic poetry gone. What else you want to say? Painters. Then the most telling thing is, who are the veritable thinkers in the Muslim world presently? Alhamdulillah, we have among our presently now Prof. al-Attas, and we had others in the past, Faruqi, we have Hussein Nasser, still living, competing in the world of thought and ideas. It gives us a drive. But remember, they are writing now in English. And this is why the main language of Arabic is becoming slowly, unfortunately, they didn't come to the fore, because what is happening now, let us say, and Prof. al-Attas was mentioning also here, the crisis of the Muslim dilemma. Our ulama has been misdirected. So the language that should spark higher intellectual debate as now being, well, it's to put it bluntly, it's being coaxed to it's being coaxed just to carry on the discussion on fiqh. Fiqh is not a problem, really. But now we make it too big, as if it's going to separate you between you are Muslim or not Muslim. In fact, according to the great Muslim who see the differences between Shia and Sunni, for them it's basically fiqhi. Of course, there is political, but do not drag it, because once you drag it, then you get into something which is far more deeper. You want to come to the point of agreement, not the point of disagreement. Even if we disagree, just keep it at that level, disagreement. So in order to do that, you have to have a certain level of intelligence, isn't it? And this is what Prof. al-Attas was saying. Now, if you can notice, he doesn't bring the issue of madhab in this discussion. He talks about Islam as a universal experience. This is important. And this is why what is missing today is the discussion about Islam as a universal religion. That he mentioned at the back when he was discussing about how Christianity trying to become a universal religion, but he did not. Still, it cannot become a universal religion because it does not have the unifying quality. For example, I remember when I was a curator at Istad Library, missionaries came to my office and they wanted to show me the Bible. So I said to him, I said, we don't have a problem with the Bible. We accept everything that the Quran says that is true about the Bible. What I mean by that is all the prophets in the Israelite tradition and the prophets of Isa alayhi salam, Jesus to you, we accept, we love him. But you have a problem with us. You never want to accept Muhammad as one of the prophets. So that is where, for us it's not a problem having the Bible in the library. Because I have many editions of the Bible in my own library at home, I said. I often read them just to see, what it says. But you have a problem. And how can you call yourself universal? You have a problem, And because of it, and I mentioned it, in fact, in the tenets of our religion, Aqaid, it is mentioned that, there are more prophets, but we don't know who they are. They are not mentioned by name. And we have been given caution that we should not give names to those that are not mentioned for fear that they are not. And we should not take out for fear that they are among the prophets. So we leave it based on the knowledge that the prophets have given their names to us. That's it. He was quite surprised. I said, for example, when you talk about the land of Ur, we know this. This is the land of Abraham, And later on becomes the Sassanid Empire, and now it's Persia. But now there is a different discourse now. It's unfortunate. It's trying to sow dissentment and hatred, because they're saying that wherever Islam went, the earlier population and earlier civilization were wiped out. Islam didn't wipe out. They just accepted Islam. Just like what happened to the Sasanian, they accepted Islam after that. Because they're now saying, Islam wiped out the earlier Persian civilization. Because they don't want to talk about Alexander the Great sacking the whole Persepolis. Because that's what Alexander the Great did. The name Persepolis was a city built for him, and it's called Perse, Persian, polis, city. Tapi he made it into Greek. That's why it's called Persepolis. That's another name about the city, Medina. I'm going to mention about it now. Wherever any civilization wants to grow, there must be a base of it, and it's always the city. And that's why Prof. al-Attas was mentioning, among the effects of religion, the word deen is the building of a city. And so when the Prophet went to Medina, Yathrib was turned into Medina. And the meme, because it's meme with daya nun and ta marbuta. So daya nun is the root aslul kalima, the root letters. So the meme is the prefix in Arabic, is the place. So is the place of religion is in the city. So that's why Yathrib later become Madinatul Nabi, the city of the Prophet. Unlike what happens in the previous cities in earlier civilization, Dato Sri, this is fascinating. The earlier cities, you see, we must conceive a bit of history and geography. Jaziratul Arab, they considered to be no man's land, desert. No one wants to go there. That's why in Upper Lawrence of Arabia, they talk about Rubul Khali, it's an empty quarter. Out of there, a civilization can come out. That it's amazing. Because Sasanian, before that, during the time of the Prophet, you have the Tigris Euphrates, you have a river. Makkah has no river. It's completely beyond civilizational requirements, criteria to become a place of civilization. It's a miraculous thing, really. On the other side, you have the Roman Empire. Roman Empire stretches all the way down to Palestine, and you have the Jordan River. Of course, if you go back to the time of the Hellenic, which is Alexander, it goes all the way to the present day Turkey. So that's why I say these two. That's why it's called the cradle of civilization, Middle East. It's like that. So you have the Romans and you have the Sasanians. They have cities. They have great cities. In fact, now they're saying maybe, Ba'labek is among the earlier. Yeah, the Prophet passes these places when, the Quran described Rihlat Tashita, it was Saif. The Prophet went to the summer, he goes to Syria to trade, It's cooler. So the point is this, the cities, these are far advanced civilization. And that's why they're saying Sasanian and goes even earlier than the time of the Prophet. And that's why I was saying why Ibrahim alayhi salam was able to build the Kaaba, because Ibrahim alayhi salam came out from a civilization that built things from bricks. The Kaaba need bricks to be built. That's why Ibrahim was part of the skill. And he and Ismail, he learned from the father to build it up, mashallah. That's why it is mentioned in Awalu Baytin Wudi'a Linnas bi Bakkata Mukarram. So that's what it is. It refers to the house of Allah, Kaaba. So this is what Professor al-Attas was mentioning. You have a philosophical basis, what happened in the West, the contemporary Western background, and now you must understand Islam. Islam has also a center. That center is the city. But the city is also the place of highly secularized living. And this is why the experience of Islam is entirely different. Why? Maybe a little bit sensitive, but I have to say this is a historical thing. The fall of the Roman Empire sees before that the fall of the Roman emperors. The Romans were ruled by emperors before that. That's why Caesar wanted to be an emperor himself. And finally, Brutus, tu Brutus, you too, Brutus. Those days, how do you end? How to end a reigning emperor or leader is just to kill. No other way, because he wields so much power. Then Roman became republic. Res public. It means everything belongs to the people. The people decides the law. How things are. Not in Islam. In Islam, you have a Medina. This is what Professor al-Attas was saying. A part of the deen is the idea of the Dayan. You have a governor, and that governor is the Prophet. He becomes the lawgiver, not personally driven. Unlike what happens in the West. The Roman, the civil law, until now we are following that to see. unbelievable, because people want their hands in making the law, which what we see in the parliament.
Yeah.
Rang undang-undang.
Yeah.
It can change things, see, by vote, but not in the city of Islam. And this is why we are now contending interests. And this is what Prophet was saying, this is for you, emergent Muslim. Do you have the intelligence to see these things, to prepare for the debates? So Medina, you have a lawgiver, you have a Dayan, but this Dayan is not just any normal Dayan. Of course, then we have a problem there. We have no prophet now. So that this is why we have the tradition al-hal wal-akad, people who are gifted in this knowledge, and we can know them. So this Medina, Prophet was saying, it is a place where the religion of Islam is lived in true reality. Now this is what we must do now. Look, from the we talk about physical planning. So the purpose of a city is for what now? Now it's commercial, isn't it? It's completely reverse what what Islam is saying. The purpose is to live religion. Alhamdulillah, at least for some of us, some of our universities, they put masjids as a center. But that's become symbolic, not in real life. Betul lah? Oh, it's good. We need symbolism too, because that's what it is. Otherwise, the flag of Malaysia, anybody can do whatever they want with it. No, you have to respect the flag. It's a symbol, isn't it? It's only red, white, blue, yellow. But we put meanings to it, red bravery, white purity, yellow royalty. Yeah, no, we put meanings. That is the part when we put meanings to it, because we want to attach to it. But here, the city of Islam is not something that you have a false attachment to it. It is something that it belongs to religion, and our religion is a real religion. That's why Prophet says it's a true and real religion. Why? Because of the verse in the Quran, Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakumul islama dinan. And I, Allah says, wa raditu lakumul islama dinan. I am pleased to call the religion Islam. That's the name. This is also another thing. The name of religion is mentioned in the Quran, not in earlier revelations. The name of the religion, the name of the followers were not mentioned in any so-called holy books of earlier religions. This is something fascinating. And this is why Prophet talks about Islam as a revealed religion. And we must understand the nature of that meaning, the nature of revelation. And he talks about it more in the book Prolegomena to the Metaphysics of Islam. How revelation comes to the qalb of the Prophet and how it changes the intellect, which he later on mentions in his book Islam Covenants Fulfilled. How the qalb has this force of impelling the intellect, and the intellect somehow then makes the physical body works. And this is why, we are always reminded, think before you act.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the Medina aspect. As I mentioned earlier, Professor al-Attas mentioned, this is page 17, that's to see. Secularization is defined as the deliverance of man first from religious and from metaphysical control of his reason and his language. See, Professor al-Attas put on the same line religion and metaphysical control. Metaphysical control, because for those who do not take religion seriously, they want to take philosophy seriously, because, well, that's how it is. I mean, you talk to people who don't follow any religion, they would talk about philosophy as if that's their guidance in life. But the point in philosophy, that higher than just philosophy, is the matter about metaphysics. What is the nature of the metaphysics that they're holding to? And this is why it is very difficult. I remember one of the things that we were discussed here is, why do you have to know these things? You see, why psychology is very important now, Dato Sri. Because I think everybody wants to understand meaning. They want to understand meaning so that they can arrive at a certainty. Now, certainty is not something static. Meaning is not something that is static. It has to grow. For example, by experience, that's what I say, for those of us who are married, we marry not the same person many, many years ago. She also grew. We also grew. We grow in terms of experience and understanding, isn't it? And what makes it more interesting. And the same thing about meanings. If we are ever tired of religion, wow, we're going to have a problem. You know, this is not, you know, iPhone 3. You can discard already because you cannot carry new iteration of the software. Religion, we must have new iteration. We are upgrading our software in terms of religion daily. That is the fascinating thing about human being, the psychology of the human mind. We are able to understand new things. Remember you shared the book, How We Learn, Dato' Si?
Yeah.
That's what the book is saying too now.
Yeah.
We are a creature, or whatever he wants to say. He said we shouldn't be called Homo sapiens. We should be called Homo docent. You know the word docent in Indonesia? Teacher. You keep on teaching yourself to grow. Because that's what we are doing. For him now, he just realized. We are not keep on reinventing ourselves, to see. So he wants to discard the old. And this is the problem of a Western idea of knowledge, because you can discard all ideas. They don't want to use the term Homo sapientia, because the word sapientia has to do with knowledge and wisdom. No, for them, knowledge can be discarded, the old one, and get a new. This is their worldview. But for us, no. Knowledge of the Quran, although, you know, it's not old. It must always be renewed in terms of understanding. And this is what the nature of ontology that Professor al-Attas was explaining about what the Quran talks about, khalqan jadid, the renewal of creation. Like this is what is happening to us. We wake up every morning, we still recognize who we are, our identity. But the experiences that has been accumulated up to that point before we wake up is still there in us. And we are now happy to attack the new world and gain new experience, isn't it? So this is what it is. We must, from that book, you know, we must continuously learn and teach ourselves anew. But isn't that one of the hadith of the Prophet? That your day must be better than yesterday? MashaAllah. See, now they are coming to see what we have been, what the Prophet has been teaching for a long time. Number 2, secularization also, this is fascinating, which I don't think, it was difficult, because I think all of you who just coming back from WISE, there are 3 aspects of secularization. Is it? Number 1 is the language, number 2 is the desecularization of
the disenchantment of nature.
That's the first one, by language, disenchantment of nature, the desacralization of politics. But what does that mean? This is what Prof. al-Attas was saying. It does not mean to make politics sacred, meaning, oh, we must have ulama in politics. No, what it means is, what is happening now in the West is that politics is completely devoid of religious consequences. Like what politics has been used for vengeance, with no impunity. You can do whatever you want because now you have power, so you can use it to attack people, to prison people. So this is what it means: the desacralization of politics. Politics must be used because what is politics? It is leadership, isn't it? As I mentioned in the past, the word politics is basically coming from the Greek word polis, which means city. So it is the way to live in a city. So Aristotle, when he wrote the book Politics, it means the way to live in a city. And that is why you need laws and regulation, the idea of civitas, the idea of, later on, Plato wrote the word, because I was mentioning res publica. Plato wrote something called the Republic. You know, that was the basis of Farabi writing the book. Yeah. Ara Ahlul Madinatu Fadila. Yeah. Meaning the opinions of the people of virtue, the people of the city of virtue. He was referring to, basically, Farabi was talking about the Republic of Plato, Greek idea, you know. Of course, it's entirely different with the Madani concept today. Don't say that Dato Ibrahim is influenced by Farabi's Madani. No. The point is, why Farabi was attracted to the idea? Because of the idea of virtue. And this is why Professor talks about virtue also, because religion espouses virtues, good values. What is missing now is what Dato Zaini will be talking a lot. You know, when you would, my brother was listening to your talk on Ikim.
Okay.
When you said in Sweden you walk a certain distance, then you see rubbish. In Japan, 2 kilometers, right? And then the interviewer was saying, "What about Malaysia?" Malaysia don't.
I'm not a tourist in Malaysia.
So the city is very important, you know, the way of life, the virtues. We have now cities, but the Islamic virtues are completely missing. Because, for example, Islam talks about an-nadhafatu min al-iman. That is combining virtue with religion. We have religion, no virtue. In Japan, in other places, they have virtues, no religion. And this is why we need to bring back these things. See?
What is virtue in the simpler Indonesian terminology?
Betul, kebajikan.
Kalau dalam bahasa Melayu?
Nilai. Sifat-sifat mahmudah kita panggil.
Mahmudah.
Ya, fadail.
In Indonesia we call it kebajikan.
Kadang kebajikan, kadang keutamaan.
Yeah.
Keutamaan. Virtue.
Because the Aqaid an-Nasafi, the word is translated berbahiki. Bahiki, berbuat baik. Kebajikan.
Kebajikan.
Yeah. So cities in Islam is a city of virtue, but driven ataupun shaped by religious virtues. Unlike what happens in the Western world, the Roman cities, their virtues are completely driven by not the basis of it from religious virtues. Their virtue is entirely different. That's why they need people who run the cities. For us, it should be natural, and that is missing now.
Yeah.
As I see. On the other hand, you have the Sasanians, because they are competing with the Romans, technologically, scientifically, knowledge-wise. Religion entirely different, but almost the same. Religion entirely different, but almost the same, because they have Zen Avesta and whatever. So that's why Islam must come with entirely something new. Not only the language of the religion of Islam is neither Persian, nor Latin, or Greek, it comes with an entirely new language, That's why this language is language that is pure from any metaphysical construct of previous civilization. And that's what happens to the Malay language here, the Jawi language. It came here, it did not pick up Sanskrit, it did not pick up any other languages, because Sanskrit, Java, whatever, Javanese culture, civilization was there, Majapahit. So when Islam came to this part of the world, with sheer ingenuity, they created a Malay language. That's why Raniri and other scholars talks about Lughatul Jawiyah. So this is what Prof. al-Attas was saying in his professorial address, Islam dan Sejarah Kebudayaan Melayu, that there must be a center, which is IBKKM, later on become ATMA, that champions the Malay language. And this is why for Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, Philippines, in order for us to bring about unity, we must use the Jawi language again. Not just the script, but also the speech using the vocabulary. Right now, Indonesian language is basically a runaway language. And they call themselves a new language. Yeah. Philippines are completely, basically, covered. Although there are so many Malay words in the Tagalog, but now it's missing. So this is why Prof. al-Attas was saying secularism comes through language. And we must understand our language. What is our mother language? It's Arabic. But unfortunately, we don't have that many people who are good in Arabic. I'm sorry to say, I vented my frustration to Shukri sometimes. We have many ustads, but they're not experts in Malay language. Unfortunate. They studied Kitab Kuning, but they cannot write in very good Malay language today. Syarahkan semula their own writing, because what is now the popular thing is ceramah umum. That's a sad thing. We do not have a reading culture in terms of our religion now, to say.
Yeah.
And that is why suddenly, I'm sorry to make this may appear as a criticism. There is a great demand on English-speaking ulama alim coming to this part of the world. Because when you speak Malay, people find it not interesting. If Professor al-Attas speaks Malay, I think they're going to fall asleep. It's too heavy. Look at Islam dan Sejarah Kebudayaan Melayu. It's difficult for them to understand. See? Even my book, Haludhil, it's very tough. Because the equipment, the tool to understand the technical term is completely lost. And this is why we need to bring it back. Previously, I think 20 years ago, it would be very difficult for the youngsters to understand Karl Marx, Wittgenstein, John Rawls. Nowadays, the youngsters now in the universities, they're quoting these people now, isn't it? But you show them Kitab Kuning, they cannot read it. This is secularization of the language, because you carry the meaning that these philosophers, thinkers that you saw, as Slatas was saying, agape at them, you cannot even appreciate what our great scholars in the past. This is one of the aspects of secularization of language. And the last one is about the values, isn't it? The deconsecration of values. So the value part, which means this is why we agree with the Greek philosophers, the four virtues, four cardinal virtues, because it can lead to the other religious virtues. See, four cardinal virtues: wisdom, temperance, courage, and justice. We agree. Then Prof. al-Attas in his book, Happiness, Meaning and Experience in Islam, he mentions about religious virtues, sabar, tawakkul, So these are no longer being inculcated. This is what Prof. al-Attas was discussing in the part on Madinah. In the part of Madinah, nowadays there's so many lawsuits. You disagree, I take you to court. I don't know what's happening now. So coming back, one of the aspects of secularization and secularism that you see is the idea of development. Page 18. So that men no longer regard nature, this is this enchantment of nature, regard nature as a divine entity and thus allow him to act freely upon nature to make use of it according to his needs and plans and hence create historical change and development. This is something that I think we somehow take this notion of change and development for granted. That's why we have a problem with it now. Changing is development. Not changing is not development. But if you look at Muslim societies, even presently, many of them don't change. And because of that, they have been accused of not developing. That is a positive way of saying you are backwards. Isn't it? Yeah. But if you go to societies like Iran, Egypt, for example, many parts are not changing. They don't change. But that doesn't mean that they're not developed, you see. But because we have this idea, the Western idea of development, is that you have to change.
Yeah.
But here's the funny thing. I was a fellow at Oxford. Dato was kind enough to visit me there. You know, now sometimes you see on Facebook, Oxford 1800s, Oxford 2000. They don't change.
Yeah.
But for us, they ask to change. They're so proud of their historical buildings that they don't change.
The chairs are not changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chairs of great scholars 500 years ago still there. Yeah. Yeah.
We don't mind physical change, but the worst is when they ask you to change your ideas. For example, the idea conception of the development itself. So this is why Prof. Attas wrote something about change, progress, and development. Yeah. It's fascinating, but we're not going to go too much into that. Yeah. This is on page 175. Very important because I mentioned that Prof. Attas why this book is regarded as a great book, because it has those elements that make it into a great book. Kalau songs, they have a certain tempo, certain rhythm, you know, that you can be sure that this is going to be a hit. Page 175, let's see.
Yeah.
Because this is in the appendix, Islamization, the case of the Malay Indonesian archipelago. The essential religious spirit of Islam is monotheistic, couched in the unique conception of the unity of God, and it is called Tawheed. This also, not so much the experience of previous religions and other religions, you see. The Romans, ancient religions, they have their own personalized religion for every tribe, for every village. Every village will have their deity. That is the nature. And this is what happens to the people of Moses. Why, when Moses went up to Tur Sinai, and Harun, who was left behind, confronted this Samiri to make the al-Ijl, to make out of gold, isn't it? Because they need something to worship, like the Romans, people under the Roman Empire. They all have something. So they thought they have this also, they have to do this. And that is why Moses, when he came down, was very upset and was very angry with Harun. But Harun it's described in the Quran. But Harun said, no, this person had the sway over them. Why? This is it. This episode in the Quran teaches us that what you have in mind in terms of religion can hold you back. This is very important. And I think that is the message of the Quran. It's not so much to belittle the followers of Moses. But you have this group of people who, despite all the things that have been gifted to them, they fail to switch, to open up to new things, this docent thing, learning. They need the old things. That's why when they get out of Egypt, Aina basaliha wa adasiha. We need this, onions and things like that. But they were given manna wa salwa. Subhanallah, you see. But they don't, familiarity. Itu yang bahaya. So we need to, now coming back to this idea of Tawheed. This idea of Tawheed in Islam is a very fascinating thing. You see, you must really appreciate Arabic in this. Tawheed is a masdar made of the second form of the word wahada. It's problematic because kalau kata God is Tawheed, the second form of the Arabic verb, it means doing it intensively. Betul tak? Right? Now, who is doing what intensively? Kalau you say God is Tawheed, God is making intense for him to be, you have a problem. That is why the Tawheed is on our part. The Tawheed is for us to emphatically and forcefully, with full intent to come up and understanding and practice that God is one. Why we need to do that? Dato say, because this is what, I don't think people understand this, but this is something unique in Islam. When we come to this world, we come into the realm of kaun, time and space. Okay? Time and space suddenly makes our understanding separated. This is why we need dana of religion, which is to bring us beyond the realm of time and space. To bring as I said earlier, remember, for our conception of religion is deen, not for you to be attached with God so much, but for you to bring your qalb or your consciousness closer to not this the realm of time and space. That's why dalam Quran sebut when there's a call for jihad, thaqilhum fil ard. Your feet, somehow thaqil, become, you are beholden to the ground, gravitating towards the earth. So that Tawheed, to see what it means is for us to seriously, affirming and confirming the oneness of Allah Ta'ala. Sebab itu, Tawheed, in my book, Lataiful Asrar lil Ahlillah al-Atiyar, I think it was the 3rd chapter of Raniri, when he mentioned about Tawheed. I translated it as affirming the unity of God. It's not the oneness of God, because Arabic meaning is wrong. Tawheed is not oneness of God, isn't it? It does not mean that. It means it's the human effort with all seriousness and full consciousness to make God alive in us, in our consciousness, that He is one. That is very, very difficult to see. First, we don't see God. Our consciousness is, there is ghaib, there is shahada. The seen and the unseen, that is binary world. How to make this one, that this seen world belongs to God. Ya salam. Because this is what the Quran says, wa ilallahi turja'ul umur. Everything returns to God. That is one of the aspects of making Tawheed. But that is so difficult. And this is why we begin everything Bismillah. We end everything Alhamdulillah. That's one of it. That is at the level of Shahada. That is at the level of conscious. We hear, we can utter. But inside, sebab itulah kadang-kadang syirik khafi ni. Syirik khafi, the hidden syirik. And this is why the Sufis talk about even ego, having a little bit of I-ness, the ananiya. That that is the hidden syirik. So this is what now you can, I think now you can appreciate the immensity that what Prof. al-Attas is trying to talk about. For us, literal meaning, Tawheed. But that's what he means, And I can understand this because I understand what he wrote in his Intuition of Existence. That's why it's very difficult. Conceived philosophically through rational theology, kalam and tasawwuf, as I mentioned earlier, it sets forth an ontology, a cosmology, and psychology of its own in its conception of the oneness of being, wahdatul wujud. Now, this is another thing. People say wahdatul wujud is a sesat. It's wrong. This is what Prof. al-Attas is saying. No, this is not aqidah. This is metaphysics. It's metaphysics. It's in the ontology aspect. This is an answer to Western conception of metaphysics, starting from the days of Aristotle. This is why our ulama then was trying to attack them, trying to build a wall to separate, what is Western metaphysics based on Aristotelian idea of ontology, right all the way now. Because now, even until today, the discussion of metaphysics has taken on a different language, but not that easy. I think now maybe for those of you who attended WISE, you can somehow appreciate now what this is all about, isn't it? It may be prior to this, oh, you guys are talking about philosophy, so difficult for my mind to understand. Yeah, because it's not about, drinks and food. Now it's about what is in your understanding of things to intelligently prepare you all. Otherwise, what's the point of reading this work? The ontology, this cosmology, this ontology and the psychology is not equated with the Neoplatonism. This is what it is. So whatever they say about, oh, there were Muslim philosophers who were Neoplatonic. No, no such thing. I've done my research. I've read the introduction of, if you read the introduction of the Lawa'ih Jamis by Winfield, you will see they were just throwing things in as if, oh, this is Neoplatonism, this is what it is. And they make this shady, I'm sorry, it's a very strange connection, as if how Neoplatonism came to the Islamic world is through Persia. Because you have Ghazali in Persia, you have Ibn Sina in Persia. Ya salam. The reverse is the story. Because Alexander the Great admitted that he brought the knowledge of Persia to Egypt. Diogenes Laertius mentioned in his works that, we learn these sciences from Persia. So, if there has been any change, it is from them. I think what happens with Neoplatonism is this. I will try to find the proof, but my suspicion is this. When they retranslated the works, the Arabic works, into Latin, they found some things that mimic to what it is there in Neoplatonic ideas. So they say, oh, this is influence. No, because remember in Islam, what is true in other civilization is true in Islam too, because the idea of urf. It's not a big deal, see? So we accepted that. But they have a problem. They want to say, this comes from the Greek, because they were translated by Christian Syriac or whatever. No, the Muslims are good at doing this. And this is what Prof. al-Attas was saying. Among the early process of Islamization started with Muslim thinkers. They didn't give it a name then, Ghazali started this out. This is why they're blaming Ghazali as the one who killed philosophy. But post-Ghazali, many new branches of learning came out, hikmah and what have you. So, it is not the same as Neoplatonism and Hinduism, according to the Vedanta, as it in general has its foundation in the Quran. This is it. The ontology, the cosmology, the psychology has its basis in the Quran, whose uniqueness has impressed itself upon every facet of Muslim life. Page 176. Minta maaf, minum air sikit. It has chosen Arabic to be the language because of the inherent scientific tendency towards clarity in the structure of the Arabic, which is pre-Islamic Arabic. not being an aesthetic religious language whose vocabulary is generally enriched or unburdened, as the case may be, by the sophisticated and inevitable confusing mythological, mystical, metaphysical, and philosophical vocabularies, was comparatively pure and unsophisticated as far as the purpose of Islam was concerned in relation to the Greco-Roman language, Latin or Greek, or for that matter, Irano-Persian language. Anyone who studies Arabic poetry knows all they talk about is the beauty of the horse, the beauty of the woman. They don't talk about anything else. And if they talk about it, it's just al-Attas, al-Uzza, Manat, that's it. No high metaphysical discussion. That's why the Arabic was taken. You see? Some people might say, therefore the Arabic of the Quran was the language of the Prophet. No, you don't understand the nature of the revelation. وَنَزَّلَهُ عَلَى قَلْبِكَ. That's what Prophet al-Attas was saying. The meaning, the wahyu goes into the qalb of the Prophet. The qalb shapes the intellect of the Prophet, thereby shaping the language that he's going to enunciate. He did not use the language from what he hears from the surrounding and then say it again. No. That's what happens. That's what happens. That's very unique, see? And that's the nature of revelation. That is why revelation came to the language of its people. Yeah. Otherwise, how did Moses can speak to his people, you know? That's why Malay language came, because, you know, it was not Javanese. If it is Sanskrit, Sanskrit has been Islamized to take on a new dimension. That's quite unique, actually, and this is why, ladies and gentlemen, for us Malay speakers, we must continuously use Malay in a very pristine manner, not the Surat Khabar language. Seriously, you know. I remember when I was supervising PhDs in Arabic, I was reading and I said, I'm sorry, your language in Arabic is not as good as the other early, you know, Arabic works. There's a Prof, this is today's language. This is today's Arabic. Yeah. It is so, it is, Allah Alam, it's difficult. If you read the great works of, for example, Ghazali, and then you read the great works of Ibn Sina, you can read, because they're at the same level of say, readability. Nowadays, I remember among the early days of ISTAC, we interviewed students from some universities who had their Arabic training. So we asked them to read Al-Ghazali. They said they don't understand. They can read, but they don't understand the implications of it. Just like you know English, you read Prof. al-Attas, but you don't understand. Why? Because the level of thought is not there. See? And see, this is what we are facing right now. We have an intelligential deficit. Prof. al-Attas talks about intelligential capacity in his book. But now we don't have intelligential capacity. We have intelligential capacity in relation to technical terms in Malay. And even for that matter in this.
So we have another half an hour. Do you have any question to ask? This is very serious discussion. 4:30 in the afternoon of Saturday. So we are still alive and awake. This is very interesting. Before I open this to others, the Islamization of Malay Indonesian archipelago is mainly through the language.
Yes.
And through the writing of the scholars. So how the process took place so that the general public can understand the high level of Malay language then?
Very fascinating. I was hoping that Dato would not ask this kind of detailed question on this part. But first, we must set the parameters. Phase 1, Islamization of the Malay world.
Page
170. Approximately 578, 805. This is Hijri, which is equivalent to 1200 to 1400s. See, came with fiqh first,
Yep.
because it's not difficult. I'm a Muslim trader. You know, Dato, remember, you post a question, what to do when you fly from this part. That's a fiqh question.
Yeah.
That's what happens. When the first Muslim who came with the traders, not because they're traders, when the first people who brought Islam here, they came through the trade routes, because the ships, the shipping routes. And that is why Islam came through sea trade, because that's the fastest mode of transportation. Otherwise, we'd be flying Boeing. But now Boeing is not good. We should be flying Airbus now. So they go by sea route. So that's why they say Islam was brought by the... No. And that's why one of the language in Islam is called Swahili.
Swahili, yeah.
It's from Arabic word Sahel. It means coastal. See? Yeah. So so when they come to this part, they want to practice their religion. So when people ask, what are you doing? I'm doing this. Why you do this? Why you do wudu? So it's fiqh first. So no higher level understanding. Of course, Quran came with it, but that first phase, you see. During this phase, major role of interpreting the religious law, this is the second phase, from 803 to 1112, 1400s to 1700s. During this phase, the major role of interpreting the religious law had passed. So 1400, 1700, 1400s is already the time of Sultan Mansur Shah. Just to give you a ballpark figure. And he mentioned here that the major role of interpreting religious law had passed on to philosophical mysticism and metaphysics. So by this time, Tasawwuf has set its foot. And we have proof of that, because in the Malay annals, Sulalatus Salatin, sejarah, whatever it's called. Sejarah Melayu, thank you. Sulalatus Salatin. It mentions about a book that was written by Maulana Abu Ishaq, yes, in Makkah, was brought by one of his students, Maulana Abu Ishaq. Abu Ishaq was in Makkah. The student was Maulana Abu Bakr, brought it to Sultan Mansur Shah in Arabic. It's called Duru Manthum. And Sultan Mansur Shah is 1400s. And the book is about Sifat Allah Ta'ala, the names, and the higher discussion which is related to metaphysics. Sultan Mansur Shah asked it to be translated. Where? Send it to Pasai. Why? Because Barus and Pasai were the early places of where Islam. And I was saying to Shukri, Lokman, Dr. Hilmi, Pasai and Barus were like Oxford and Cambridge for the Muslim world then. So Indonesia, you have to do a lot of work to bring back, the...
But where is Pasai now?
Where is Pasai now?
Aceh? Barus? Kalau baru bandar baru sekarang bandar apa? Kalau Barus masih Barus. Barus ya, jarang dengar.
It's Hamzah Fansuri.
No, I mean what I'm saying, the
Yeah,
town.
because we lost it. That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't, because we thought about, as I said, city development, we move here and there, but so
okay.
the Indonesians have a lot of work to do to bring back the importance of Pasai and Barus.
And then after sending it to Pasai and Barus,
it was translated and brought back.
Brought back. Okay.
And parts of that Durul Mandum is mentioned in what I'm working right now, Jawahirul Ulum fi Kashfi Ma'lum. So that's fascinating. Yeah, and that's by
That
Raniri.
is around 14.
This is 1400s, but Raniri uses lines of it, and Raniri was 17th century. So that's why, 1400s you have Hamzah Fansuri and Sumatruddin Sumatrani, Syamsuddin Sumatrani, and all that's until Raniri. So that's the
There
age.
is no Malaki.
Yeah.
Malacca.
No.
No scholars from Malacca.
No. Because Malacca was basically in 1500s, it's gone. The Portuguese took
But
it.
there no trace of scholars, whatever.
Nothing. They ran away.
Ran away to Aceh, all of them. So went to Aceh as well.
So just like what happens in the Second World War, you know, they made an agreement with Hitler, don't bomb Oxford.
Yeah. All learning centers are not bombed.
Yeah.
Were not bombed. Yeah. And then 17 onwards.
So from that fundamental concepts Prof. al-Attas mentioned here in the 1400s, 1700s, during this phase, Sufism and Sufi writings, primarily the writings of Mutakallimun, played the dominant role, aimed at the conversion of the spirit. You see, and this is why there was a writing that about it was done by a Japanese scholar. I forgot that. Is it dalam Jambras? About Luqman, about that Dutch. Huh? I know, but it's published where? Jambras. Yeah. Yeah. He was writing about, based on the diary of Dutch officials, how they saw Raniri was playing a key role in influencing the Sultan. Yeah. So, for some reason, I think this is the wisdom of our Muslim scholars. They go to the person that matters, I think. So they bring themselves close to the royalty at that time. And this is why we have royals marrying. You see this in historical fact and fiction by Prof. al-Attas, and how the royalty of the Malay world are basically related to the bloodline of the Prophet ﷺ. So that's one way to cement the Islamization. And that is why they find books of Raniri, Hamzah Fansuri, Samsul Zumatrani in Istana.
In libraries in Istana.
Yeah. and I remember when I was in Oxford, at Oxford, I was given my presentation about my research. And then Allah Yarham, Professor Yahya Misho was asking how widespread was the teachings of Raniri. I said, well, can you imagine, you know, he's from Ranir, and then he was at some point was in Pahang, and then this book that I'm working on, the manuscript, it was discovered in Terengganu, but his main activity was in Aceh, and we don't find only one copy, many copies, I said. So it means it's widespread. So remember, by the time of Raniri, 1700s, 16 something, yeah, 17th century, people were reading these metaphysical works. That's what I'm saying. Now we cannot understand it, you know. But I was asking the person who brought the manuscript, where did you find it? He said, in some of the surahs in Kuala Berang. But we lost that science of reading these things. And that's why now we have to backtrace by reading al-Attas first.
Yeah. And keep the book. Yeah. So not many people would like to keep the book. They donate to libraries and whatnot and then lost. So library also don't know where to put these materials.
This kind of material, yeah. And this is why
it's difficult to index.
Sorry?
Difficult to index.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, because there is no title, no publisher, no year.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. It reminds me of the days when I was working the rare books, curator of Istad Library, and also the rare books at the University of Chicago. Yeah, we were dealing with this kind of stuff. Yeah. So yeah, you need people who actually know the subject matter and the material to actually resource it. I remember one of PhD student at that time. I was manning the counter at Joseph Regenstein Library, and he was asking, "Do you know where I can find this book?" I said, "I know exactly where it is." So I went to the stack because I know the stacks. The normal users, they don't know, because that was my duty. I must know the stacks at the back. I was looking after the rare collection, the rare and special collections, things that people don't see outside. So, fundamental concepts introduced according to the Islamic world Tanshao. Now, this is fascinating. The reason why I want to read this part, Dato, the term worldview didn't start with Prof. al-Attas with the Prolegomena in 1978. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, he was cognizant of the worldview in 1978 when he was how many years old? So the fruition of the idea, the writing it out in 1995, it's just, as they say, flows with it. He has seen it, you know. And that's why I find it very fascinating, because while he was writing the chapters to the Prolegomena to the Metaphysics of Islam, for those of you who might not fail to appreciate, he was building the new building, the ones that you guys are visiting. At night he would be drawing it, you know. I think you can see in the book, it's that illuminated. So because, you know, every day when he comes, he would show to us, Professor Wan, Arwah Chemat Ali, and myself, because I'm going to be part of the library. So he said, Zaini, can you tell me what to do? What do you need? So the furnitures that you see in the library, partly was, you know, I give the feedback to it, how, because the way the library is going to be used, you know.
So why it is appendix?
Later on, he wrote something called A General Theory of the Islamization of the Malay Archipelago, and it is here. Remember that?
It's appendix. Yeah, I was asking myself why it is in appendix, not a chapter by itself.
Later on, he published it as a small book, preliminary statement of the general.
That's 1969.
1969.
But
So,
previous, I think that's a previous book.
Yeah, I think he wanted to develop it into a book by itself.
Okay.
Yeah. So in Malay, it becomes Islam dan Sejarah dan Kebudayaan Melayu.
Yeah.
This Malay origin of the Malay Syair and the I think he was thinking about this. He was saying he was in a ship traveling, coming back to Malaysia. So maybe he was thinking of writing into a separate book by itself, you know. Because it's in here too, the 1978.
Yeah, but I was curious why suddenly there is an appendix to the book. Normally, appendix is not a kind of a chapter.
Sorry?
Normally, appendix, not a kind of chapter.
It's not a chapter, yeah. I think it's trying to explain some of the things that he's discussing, this, but not fully developed. Because remember, this book is, he mentioned that chapter 3, which is Islam dan Sejarah, Islam Foundation, Concept of Religion, Foundation of Ethics and Morality, is basically written earlier for the Festival of Islam. Yeah. And then the other chapters were written while he was the visiting professor at Temple University.
Yeah. Any question, please?
Prof did mention somewhere that big trees have deep roots, and you know, so how do we sort of relate that conceptualization of Islam and Secularism having this deep roots by having proper and correct understanding?
I think that I think he was driven by the verse of the Quran, and he mentioned here, in the introduction, for the emergent Muslim, because the deep roots referring to the verse in the Quran, Mathalu kalimatin tayyibatin kashajaratin tayyibatin asluha thabitun fil ardi wa far'uha fis sama tu'ti ukulaha kulahini. So he looks at this idea of knowledge as deeply rooted in knowledge, you know, because Prophet always reminds us, you know, ar-rasikhuna fil ilm, you know, for those who are deeply rooted in knowledge, referring to that verse of the Quran. So, and this is why I remember when we were talking with him at the old Istar, he said, you know, I don't need many people, just few people. And indeed, I think with just few people, he developed that Istar. Until now, it reverberates the ideas, isn't it? So we hope with the program, like, you know, what Dr. Hilmi is continuing doing, WISE program, this thing is continually.
Yeah. I have this question when I was in Middle East recently.
Okay.
There was a question of Muslims should be more secular. There was a question asked.
Yes.
Means that we are not not living between, I mean, too religious means that you are not thinking about other things other than going to Umrah and then coming back, doing Hajj and then going to mosque. That's what does it mean by being Muslim, religious Muslim. So, and this guy is very prominent, living in Mecca. And he said that, I mean, probably he's not very well versed in English to find the words. So he said that Muslims should be more secular. I mean, you have to think about other things. Yeah, not only, especially people in Mecca, preparing Umrah, providing everything for Hajj and whatnot. So that's the business in Mecca at the moment. So he said we should do more than that. We should do science, we should do business, we should enrich Muslim community coming to Mecca and not to be too religious. We should be a bit secular. There was a question. Oh my God. So I asked him to follow this. I sent him this link for him. So can you answer? Then he's from Makkah, so you have to.
No, Professor al-Attas has answered that in the page on secularization. I couldn't find it, but it's a good thing to end also, because he mentioned what he means by secular, because the word secular, to see, means here and now, from the Latin word here and now, which in Arabic it means the word count. As I said, the word count. Kaf, waw, nun. It's from kana. And when Allah says, إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَنْ يَقُولَ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُونَ. It is be here and now. Take your existence here and now. So part of being religious in Islam is to be here and now, but does not mean if you limit yourself only to here and now, that is when you be too secular. So yes, Professor al-Attas was saying, we mean by Islamic State, I think at the beginning, it does not mean that the state should be ruled by people who are so-called religious, and you take out everything that is secular. Yeah. But no, we must also have the part that we must be part of this world, because in Islam it's neither wholly theocratic. Yeah. It cannot be entirely, be theocracy as understood in the West, because this is not what Islam is. Because in religious experience of the West, being religious, because they have understood the idea of give Caesar to what is due to Caesar and give God what is due to God. No, for us it is both. So we should not be entirely living out this world. In fact, our duty is to the idea of the imara, to build up this world, to raise it, and this is what Ibn Khaldun was talking about, the umran from imara, which is to build up, and later on, I think the idea of hadara. The hadara is the physical aspect of civilization. That's why the word hadara is also translated as civilization. The other aspect of civilization is the tamaddun, the word from Medina. So we must marry these two. So Professor al-Attas was talking about Medina as the basis of a city, and to build civilization that becomes tamaddun, a civilization at the core of a religion, but at the outer physical aspect of it is the hadara. And the hadara is what Ibn Khaldun talks about, umran, because the umran is the idea that it was developed from the responsibility of imara to build this world. Yeah. So we cannot
say if the correct question, not to make Muslim more secular, to make sure that we can also think other than Salat, Haji, Umrah. So that's what people think, being a Muslim, especially if you live in Mecca. So that's what you should be doing. Other than that, this is halas, this is dunya, this is secular. So for him, he said, because he was trained as a physicist, so he said that we should be more thinking about our things, say for example, how to govern this proper and to make it more systematic, because people say this is dunya. This is, what is important for us is the pillars of Islam, and what is needed for Muslim to perform Umrah and Hajj. So the question is too much into religious to be Muslims, not other than that. Yeah. So I'm not sure how to put it, but for him, the words that he used, other than Salah, Umrah and Hajj, was to be more secular. But I don't know, probably...
Yeah, we must explain to him the meaning of the word secular. It is to be here and now. In a sense, yeah, we do agree with him, but we shouldn't be too limiting that it is only this worldly. I can understand the frustration, but he must understand also he lives in a safe place. It's called haram. In a haram, that is where it is supposed to be. See, but outside, for example, in Medina, it's a different matter altogether. But within Masjid Nabawi, you shouldn't do any other thing. You know, you can have discussion about knowledge and whatever, but to develop those things must be outside a certain realm. But yes, in many ways, this is what Prof. al-Attas was trying to explain the meaning of seculum. It means here and now. We have a duty as Muslim, Khalifatullah fil ard, that we are duty bound to look after this world too. And for that, it requires more understanding in terms of physics, science, mathematics, chemistry, or whatever, finance and things like that. But we must do that within the worldview of Islam.
Yeah.
So
was that true that in the past, the pillars, the tiang-tiang masjid, so you can learn mathematics, you can learn astronomy. At the moment, it's only fiqh.
Yeah.
You go to Mecca or Medina between Maghrib and Isha.
I don't know, but remember those days when you want to build something, the first thing, for example, you want to build a masjid, you must know the direction of the Qibla. In order to do that, you must know trigonometry. That's the basis for any astronomy.
Yeah.
So in order to do trigonometry, you must have something that is standing up. So the pillars will help you easily.
So what I mean now, between Maghrib and Isha, after your Ba'diyah, there are ustaz teaching some reading. Yeah. So in the past, I was told that there are also mathematicians.
Yeah.
But now we don't have mathematicians.
We don't do that.
Yeah.
That's what the story of Ibn Battuta.
This is what my colleague's professor asking me. It's supposed to be more secular.
Yeah.
We read mathematics.
It's not a problem to have. It's not a problem to have learning and teaching in the masajids to talk about physics or whatever, because that's how Al-Azhar started too. The halaqah, of course, it started
the
with
halaqah,
religious.
halaqah.
The halaqah, the study circles. But I was going to say that that's how we know the Rihlah Ibn Battuta. After he traveled around the world, he was sitting in the masjid. He was recounting the stories.
In the masjid.
He was recounting the stories until it was until the stories lend the ear, reaches the ear of the Sultan. So the Sultan decided, okay, please go and record these things. And that's what happens. Yeah. Otherwise, we don't have the travels of Ibn Battuta, because he doesn't write so much,
So he's also a traveler. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Strictly.
he's chairman of masjid.
I think the infrastructure is there, for the scholars, be it whether Islamic religious or even those philosophers, to speak in the mosque or surau for that matter. But there is a procedure. You have to get the tawliyah. Just like you want to drive a car, you need to get a license. But this is, I think, the issue. I think the Islamic scholar also have to be open, because at the end of the day, what is the ultimate objective? If by going through the process to get the tawliyah, and that will give you the platform for you to speak for a greater benefit. Why not? But the problem is sometimes everybody is so, can I use the word taksub, you know? Why should I go for tauliah, all this thing, you know? So this is a problem, you know. In fact, we have in certain state also, you know, some people don't want to go to get the tauliah for whatever reason. Like in our surau, you know, my surau, there was one, we invited the counselor to speak about kesihatan mental, mental health. You know, because right now, especially in our Surau community, many senior citizens, sometimes they are very lonely. You know, especially, yeah, they are in a WhatsApp group for their family, but they're complaining sometimes. Their children just WhatsApp, sharing this and sharing that, and they say, I want to hear their voice. Mental health. So now, in fact, my invitation to Dr. Zaini is still standing. I want him to speak.
With Zaini.
Both Zaini. Yeah, both Zaini. It's still standing for my surau.
Okay.
Because for certain, like, we can go and put justification. If you are, say, for example, to invite a medical doctor to speak, you know, sometimes you don't need to go through process of interview or anything. But I think it's the readiness and openness. You know, and we have done it before. Some people talk about not only fiqh only, Islamic finance also. So I think it's just a question of sometimes readiness. You know, like they said, if the, you know, we went the other day, if the students are ready, the teachers will be there, will appear. Now, we the students are ready. So we are waiting for the teachers, both of you. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? I just want to highlight, we have new books. Yes, we have new books by Akademi Jawi. They are our sponsor today, so we have to. Batu Bersurat Terengganu, Pendeta Zakbar, Tradisi Keilmuan Ulama Perempuan di Alam Melayu. And this is this is a new book. Khabar Gembira, Dalail al-Khairat,
Dalail Khairat,
yang penuh cahaya, oleh Muhammad Nazrul Abdul Nasir Al-Azhari. Yeah, this is very nice book. So this is these are books published by Akademi Jawi. So whoever interested, Shukri is here. Final question.
Assalamualaikum.
4 karangan oleh Zakbar.
Telah menyebut tajuk Batu Bersurat tu. Saya pun nak tanya soalan tu juga. Soalan Batu Bersurat juga. I think bukan we agree lah. Kita menerima hakikat bahawa Batu Bersurat itu ialah dokumen yang terawal tentang Islam itu. Dan kajiannya saya tidak tahulah sejauh mana orang mengkaji, tapi kita masih lagi belum menemui dia punya kerangka penulisan Batu Bersurat itu. Dia ditulis dalam bahasa kod-angkod Melayu campuran dengan Aceh, Sumatera mungkin begitu. Dan penulisnya itu siapa kan? Adakah orang Melayu tempatan di Terengganu, di Kuala Berang ataupun di Jenagor itu, ataupun dia ada ditulis oleh orang Yaman yang namanya Muhammad Syarif Muhammad Al-Baghdadi, orang yang pertama datang ke Kuala Berang ataupun ke Terengganu, Ulu Terengganu untuk menyebarkan Islam. Dan dia tulisan itu tulisan tentang perundangan. Pada ketika orang Terengganu itu saya ingat bukan masyarakat yang berilmu, bukan begitu tinggi ilmunya. Walaupun ada ditulis oleh Motek, Kementerian saya sebut dulu, kita telah bincang, oleh Kementerian Pelancongan, bahawa Syarif Muhammad Baghdadi itu ialah anak Terengganu yang merantau ke Mekah belajar dan balik mengajar. Tetapi tulisan-tulisan yang lain seperti tulisan Hamka contohnya, mungkin saya boleh quote sedikit. Syarif Muhammad Baghdadi itu asalnya daripada Baghdad yang datang ke Aceh, ke Pasai, mengislamkan Raja Pasai, kemudian selepas itu datang ke Kuala Berang. Jadi bahasa Melayu kita ni saya ingat mungkin juga bermula daripada Aceh itu. Jadi saya tak fikir orang-orang di Kuala Berang itu is a learned people pada ketika itu untuk menulis satu perundangan, satu tulisan tentang undang-undang. Bukanlah kita nak mengecilkan, tapi saya ingat oleh kerana kita ni dijajah, bangsa Melayu ketika itu dijajah oleh Majapahit dan Sriwijaya, saya ingat kita masih lagi berada dalam keadaan bukan bermaklumat lah, kan. Jadi saya nak tanya tu, adakah Profesor dapat menghuraikan tentang batu bersurat itu sendiri, tentang sejarah penulisannya itu, penulisan dari segi intelektual itu.
Prof Zainiy ada tulis buku tentang batu surat ni. Ya.
Bukan saya tulis, saya edit satu buku. The correct date of the Terengganu inscription is religious, scientific, and cultural dimensions. It contains other articles by other scholars pertaining to different aspects. The religious aspect, of course, what Prof al-Attas was mentioned in the correct date of Terengganu inscription. The education aspect was I think I forgot her name. Professor Wan wrote something. That's Professor Asma, I think, wrote something, and Professor Razak from UKM on the mathematics, the science of mathematics, because there's this weighing, setengah, tiga, whatever it is. Those are mathematics. And then the geological aspect by one geologist from UKM. Prof Tajul Arwah, yeah. So we found out that the stone was from Terengganu. So it must be carved locally. So it was carved locally. That is the logical consequence of it. Now, it is not written by any person that we know of. Maybe this is a new information. What I want to say is this: the edict reads, it is an edict. Maknanya it's a perintah. In the old days, it's a pemasyhuran. And the story of a stone inscription is not unique in Terengganu. There are many other stone inscription in Indonesia that even earlier, like in the days of you have the Rosetta Stone. That's also a proclamation. So this is not meant to be read by anybody, but it is by everybody. But it is a proclamation. So it was also it's a proclamation done on behalf of a ruler of the time. The ruler of the time, his title was given Seri Paduka Tuhan. And the person that was referred to, Raja Mandalika. Raja Mandalika is not a title, but not a name, but a title. Mandalika means a place. So it's like a governor. In local language today, is a district officer. So because you have like a ruling person, Sultan Seri Paduka Tuhan, he instructed that this edict be erected. For what purpose? To declare that the law of Islam, Sharia, is to take place in the land Terengganu. And it is to be erected, it is mentioned, on the first Friday in the month of Rajab. First Friday in the month of Rajab, when the moon is in the constellation of Sharatan. So when Prof al-Attas was reading that, what attracts him was the science of astronomy. This is 1300s, 1303. 1303, when we study the development of science and technology in Islam, between 12th and 13th century, meaning 1100s to 1200s, that's the peak, the highest production of astrolabes in Islam. It's also the age of many discoveries and trades that happened in the civilization of Islam. But not many writings came out because, who wants to read this stuff? We don't have experts in the field. even this, that's why you have a contending, ataupun somebody tries to read it in a different language. That is Professor Ahmad Adam, who says, no, this is Javanese, not Islamic language, but Javanese language written in Arabic. And that is why he insisted that these terms be read with a Javanese Sanskrit meaning. For example, he says Sasanakala is the term that is used to understand the beginning of the Buddhist teaching. So if we were to use that word, meaning the beginning of a teaching, well, then we have a problem. Di tahun syaratan, di sasanakala baginda telah lalu. How do you explain the word? He began teaching and he began walking. But for our point of view, Islam began with, it's not the beginning of the counting of dates and days in Islam, years, does not begin with the beginning of the Prophet's teaching, because then it will start at the age of 40. But from the Muslim calendar, it always starts with him moving to Medina. It's the Hijrah, the Medina to Nabi. So this is why the word Sasanakala has been Islamized, not to referring to the beginning of a teaching, but just a time period. Di Sasanakala, baginda telah lalu 702. So yes, it is about, but it is about legal aspect of Islam. And very interesting, there is also an element of, I forgot what is the term in law, where you commit something and then there's a reduction in the penalty. So for example, when you commit something, of course it says that when you have a married couple commit some, you have to, 100 lashes. You have to have hambalang hingga mati.
Mengaku.
Ya, direjam dengan batu.
Takpil, mengaku.
So there is some kind of dispensation to the ruling. It can be reduced, So kalau bujang, you boleh bayar denda. That's why the word danda, dharma. The word dharma in Sanskrit, it means penalty. See, at that time. But now, by this time now, dharma means something which is below sedekah and zakat, isn't it? Yeah. So the intellectual aspect of it, yes, at that time the society may not be entirely, literate to read this, but the fact that why is it in Kuala Berang? Because Kuala Berang was a port. Macam like Pekan. Pekan was a place of a port. That's why the royal capital for Pahang is Pekan, because that's the safest place for you to park your ship. Sorry to use the word park, away from the monsoon in the open sea. So you bring your ship right into the rivers, and that's why Kuala Berang, Pekan, that's how it is. So, and that's why the edict was put there, because it's the center of ruling at that time. Of course, we have Bukit Putri, where Terengganu is now. That's one of the royal places, but that's more like a lookout. That's why you have a lighthouse there in Bukit Putri, Terengganu. What fascinates me is the fact that I'm a physics astronomer. How is it that they're able to observe the moon and the constellation so precisely that it is in the constellation? I mean, I put the dates that Professor al-Attas calculated, and it's 22nd February 1303, which is equivalent to the 4th of Rajab, 702. I put that in the software, planetarium, stellarium, and it puts the moon exactly in the constellation of Aries or Hamal. Aries is the English term for Sharatan. And when I looked at the planetarium, because they can beam this up, and it's written there, Sharatan. And one of the other name of Syaratan is the Hamal, and it's there. Which means that the precision of Muslim astronomy has been so precise. And then later on, I'm not surprised, because I read the book On the Shoulders of Giants, but before that I read the book in English. It's the book by Nicholas Copernicus in my class, History of Science. It did not register to me then, because I was just 19, 20 years old. But when I was working on this, it came to my mind, because Nicholas Copernicus was 15 something, and he used in his book the revolution of the heavenly spheres, de revolutionibus orbium celestium. He mentioned the word, the data coming from 3 Muslim astronomers, Al-Batani, I forgot the other 2 names. And this is 1500s. Now, the precision of Batu Bersurat's astronomy was 1303. Copernicus died 1543, 200 years later. Galileo, 16 something, see, after that. So it struck me that why Copernicus used the data from the Muslims, because the Muslims at that time were doing active observational astronomy, and they were collecting the data. Remember, the observatory of Ulugh Berg, they used to correct the data from Ptolemy, and this is a well-known fact. The Muslims astronomers were correcting the data of the Almagest by Ptolemy, which is, if you look at the data, it's just like the old, logarithm book, just numbers. That makes no sense. But for astronomers, that's yummy stuff.
So do you think that astronomer orang Kolberang ataupun orang Aceh ataupun orang Baghdad?
That's a good question.
We are now exceeding 15 minutes. This is very
we
tough.
have. It can be the astronomer that has been living there, because remember, Kolberang was the port where all ships would come and so-called park. So you have scientists, you have scholars, you have businessmen.
Kolberang is in Terengganu,
yeah.
where we lived when we were younger.
And in order for you to move about using the ship, you must have an astronomer to navigate. Yeah. And there may not be one person, but this particular person must know the Sri Paduka Tuhan. And remember, there are many ships there, so they have many people, many astronomers who were with them, to navigate. Yeah. And that is why for us it's not important the one person. No, it's the culture at that time.
So no. Otherwise we finish at 6. Okay, we would like that to be continued next month for discussion. We have another event tonight at 7:30. So I want to stop here. Thank you for your time with us, not only here but also online. For my brothers in Mecca, so that's the answer. If you want more discussion, so please come to Malaysia. We can have this discussion. Not to be too, not to make. I can understand him trying to find correct words to indicate that Islam is not only going to masjid for prayers, Umrah and Hajj. It's more than that. That's what he meant. But to find correct words to say that Islam should be more than that. So he used the word secular. So I think it is inappropriate terminology for that. With that, I thank everyone. May Allah bless us. May Allah reward us. Then may Allah continue this discussion in the future to enrich Muslim minds to think about Islam in a different perspective. And we'll notify what books we want to discuss later.
I have in mind the origins of the Malaysia.
Say something.
I have in mind the origins of the Malaysia.
Okay.
Because there has never been touched at all.
Okay. We are going to be poets after this.
And I think the book is available from Cik Mazin, right?
Yeah. It's okay. We are going to talk about Syair after this. I'm already a poet, okay?
In the making.
Yeah. So with that, we close this session. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Subhanakallah wa hamdika. Asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamualaikum.